Okay. Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Okay, fine. So today we're running with a very nice interview. I have my coffee, my tea nearby. So this is for our audience. We have Nick here. Nick is a VP Data Group at the Commercial Executive Division, Crum& Forster, the U.S. Division Property and Casualty Insurance Company. So I'm so happy to have you here. Before we are going to introduce you and speak about your role, I'm Zinat Ezra, VP Product at Octopai. Happy to have this interview with you. So we'll have some fun, some questions, and let's take some stories, some jokes about Gen AI. We have to have this in the middle. So introduce yourself, Nick, your role in the company with Crum & Forster, and how do you perceive your strategic role in the company for, I don't know, how many years you are with the company?
Yeah, I've been at Crum for 15 or 16 years now,
Wow.
in various forms. But I started out as a consultant on the data side, and before that, I have a background in IT and data. My whole career, my degree is actually in mechanical engineering, but ended up in IT. And yeah, I've been in insurance with Crum for 15 years now. It's a great company, and yeah, really enjoying it.
Okay. So before we dive in, I will present myself shortly, and then we'll start with, talking to each other about problem, challenges, and solutions as always. So 25 years in technology product management for decades, and I'm with my company for the last year. Great company, but technology and data, IT, it is my life and my career, and I'm always striving to speak to leaders like you. So I'm here to learn also, and I'm sure that the audience would like to hear more. So if you have questions, please contact me. My name is Zinat Ezra on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure that Nick, you are also there, so feel free to contact Nick. So let's start with, 15 years, it's a lot, but you have a perspective. So I think that always the time and experience gives us the right perspective, and we learn from the history. So let's start always with a problem. So which problems or challenges you're facing with your data and data flows?
Well, yeah, so we have probably, like many companies of our size, we have quite a few legacy applications. Like, so we have to like understand the data that we have, right? Is the first challenge. Crum & Forster is 200 years old, which is that's pretty old for an insurance company in the US, right? Luckily, we don't have 200-year-old mainframes or anything like that, but we do have legacy. What's that?
You could in 200 years from now, you could have legacy.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, so yeah, we have legacy applications, but it's not that bad. But still, like a company of ours, that you tend to have acquisitions over the years. You tend to have a lot of similar applications that are doing similar things because of those acquisitions. So you'll end up with all these different applications. You'll have data marts here, and the data warehouse here, and reports pointing to all these different things, and data movement jobs, like moving things around. And it's just like this incredibly complex spaghetti mess, and you have to get your head around that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really, in terms of challenges, it's complex. It's all about complexity.
So I'm thinking out loud, adding to this, on-prem and cloud, and there is a pressure to move to the cloud, and then by moving to the cloud, and then there are the expensive cloud costs that you need to be very minded with. Therefore, from legacy to cloud, it's even a greater challenge is just to move in. Like I'm saying always, garbage in, garbage out, it's very easy to do. But how do you solve this? How do you solve the challenges that you're facing? What's your strategy?
Yeah, we are moving to the cloud, but because of some of these problems. So yeah, we started out by, like I say, truly understanding the high level picture of how, just at the application level, like not even down to the table level or the column level yet, like just at the application level, how does data move from application to application around the company? So we started at the big picture, and then then zooming in with like data lineage down to the column, the table level, then the column level. And some of the problems we have is, like I say, many different data marts, different data warehouse in the middle, but problems with performance and so on. So once you reach a certain scale, really, unless you have very well structured data, you really do need to move up to the cloud to be able to take advantage of the scale of it. You have a big history of data that you want to keep, that you want to look back on with machine learning models and so on. And you need to keep that history of data for other reasons. And so yeah, moving into things like Databricks, Snowflake, Synapse, like all of these cloud tools, that's the way a lot of the industry is going. And so what we're doing is trying to get rid of that spaghetti mess and having much more of a single source of truth and repointing things to that. That's really complex. Like there's so many applications and things to be repointed.
And thinking out loud, it's even beyond, the zooming in, zooming out. It's a great strategy, but you need to be familiar with everything that was done, and sometimes you don't have the right people and the people that know what was done, so you're losing that side as well. But for moving to, this is the right solution, probably, right? Starting with mapping everything, but what were the main drivers to implement the right solution? What drove you, and what were the steps of that strategy?
So to get from the point of spaghetti to single source of truth, right? That's really, really difficult to do. So, and it's going to take a long time. So you have to do it in a smart way. So having the right tools to make that change easier really helps. One thing is looking at having a data lineage allows you to reduce the time of that impact analysis. So if I change this source over to this source, what is everything that's impacted? And how do I even do the analysis to understand what has changed? So I've got all of these like ETL jobs, like data movement jobs, that come out of this source, and they go to various data marts and tables along the way. And then out of that, I might have another hop and another data mart, and then various dashboards and reports off of that. It's really complex. So using a data lineage, you can, it's just a time reduction. Your analysis becomes far quicker. And not only that, the risk reduction as well is important, because like how do I know, like maybe I've got not perfect documentation, maybe I've got new developers, maybe I've got things running that I've never had a problem with for 3 years, right? They run in production, my developers don't really even know about it or think about it, but it's very important. How do I know that if I change this source that I've caught everything? So it's like you need to have tools to be able to make sure you've caught everything, that you're reducing your risk for this big big change that we're working on.
Sounds like one of the main drivers would be like changing with confidence, and that confidence is related to the fact that you have visibility and traceability in everything, and time is money, time to value, and you need to run with the strategic project whilst you still run your production and you have your tickets, and everything should be done in parallel. So time is of essence. So, and you said it right. It's about risk aversion eventually. And I had one of the customers that I was speaking to, he was giving me an example of, we had like a forum of people talking about that change that we need to make, and it took us like 3 months of debating and discussions, and we didn't know exactly, and we felt like we're blind. So I asked him, okay, so do you do it? No, we decided it's too risky. So that fear of change is something that it's not even about the time reduction, cost savings. It's basically paralyzing the business, right? We are starting to be measured about time to value, business-driven decisions. And if you can't run an impact analysis in a few minutes or a few days, and you say it will take us 3 months to decide, then you're done, right? And with a new generation, guys, think about the 200 years, nobody has patience anymore. We become impatient to everything, like in our personal lives. So business-wise, we are expected to run faster. And then other topic would be, okay, you did the change, and then it's about discipline, right? It's not about a one-time thing. So how are you going? So let's rephrase it. What strategies have you employed to prevent the accumulation of technical debt after you have migrated to the cloud? You know, garbage in, garbage out? Not again?
Yeah, technical debt is a balancing act, right? Like you could spend your whole time reducing technical debt and not deliver anything, or you could just deliver and just accumulate technical debt, and neither is good. So you have to manage it, and you have to be constantly looking at it. You have to manage it. It's like change management from the technical level and from the business level. Your users are impacted, your IT work is impacted. But how do we manage that? Like we work in a very agile manner. So we're using Scrum methodologies. So we're having 2-week sprints. So we're doing sprint planning at the 2-week level, but we also do quarterly planning, and we try and have at least one sprint a quarter where we do continuous improvements. And a lot of that continuous improvement, it might be best practices, it might be technical debt reduction. And then we'll sprinkle in that kind of tech debt reduction during other sprints as well. So that's one way that we look at it. We're also constantly like reviewing our best practices. We're working on automation all the time. Like some of my teams like have so much focus on QA automation, for instance. Like as an insurance company, we're really a financial services company, right? We're dealing with financial data and moving data around a lot, right? That's what we do. And whenever we're moving, financial data around, we have a lot of regulations around us. So we're we are audited. We need to be very careful that we're balancing between every step. So we can't do that manually. We automate as much as possible. So everything that we do, whether it's reconciliation or just more general QA, we try and have that automated. So that's a good way to reduce our tech debt. There's certainly data governance in general can help reduce our tech debt. there's a lot of regulations that apply to us, and so we have to stay on top of all of that. Yeah.
All right. So so most of the software management per se methodologies in terms of DevOps, CI/CD, running in sprints, agile, change management for every running with an impact analysis, effort estimations, and you do this incrementally. I'm saying always make sure that you do it and then perfect it later. So we see that these disciplines are growing in terms of data teams. Not all the data teams are adopting it, but I think it's key to success. It's already done. The term of data ops is becoming, I'm saying it will take some time until it will be comparable to what we know in software management. But one of the things that I know for sure that is a root of a technical debt is, as you said before, change reverse, meaning I would prefer to add instead of changing what's working. And then I'm duplicating, and then you duplicate, and then you duplicate again. Even though you could have the best practices in that notion of I'm running in sprints, question is, how can I not create any technical debt if I can? I'm striving to it by making sure that I'm running in a lean manner, meaning I'm changing what I have because I see. And then sometimes, running with an impact analysis with an automated data lineage solution would be the answer instead of creating layers and layers of duplications. And then
I think a catalog helps with that side of it as well, right? Because you know what data you have where, you might know what reports you've got, like where the data comes from. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, can I have a report that does this, you can much more quickly, like if you don't know off the top of your head, you can much more quickly go and say, okay, we've already got a data set or a dashboard that has that, or it has 90% of it and we'll just add a field to it rather than just creating something new, right? A catalog helps to get you there.
It's documentation in general. It helps document everything, right?
Yeah.
And then this is exactly the center of, the business that wants the insights faster, and then the data teams that want the control. They want the control, and then are fighting with each other. Then you have this in the middle, and I'm always saying you have the catalog, you have the documentation, and it needs to be still within the data hygiene space. It should stay thin and nice as well. And then the dream is eventually is to have that solution in place that I could easily have the interface and ask the question, right? Reminds me of generative AI, ChatGPT, and the paradigms of the ChatGPT OpenAI started to enter the business world. So as a B2C company, for example, you want to serve your customers as fast as possible with insights about an insurance policy or to predict a pattern, right? So in order to do that, you need to understand how to deal with the data. So how do you see Gen AI changing the way that you deal with the data?
Well, if you look at like the classic generative AI that everyone talks about is ChatGPT, right? That's the biggest one. Came out in November, kind of 18 months ago, whenever it was.
Yeah.
Fantastic tool, right? It's amazing, but it's a standalone tool, right? So you can basically give it something within this window and it'll give you a response back. It's standalone. When it becomes more powerful is when it has access to more of your data, like maybe your metadata. or maybe your data itself, right? So when you think about if ChatGPT or something similar can understand, okay, I'm giving it some code. Let's say I have a select statement that I've written that is pulling data from certain tables, right? If you just give it that and say, okay, can you tell me a problem in this code, or it's running too slow, or I'm getting this bug, or please comment this code. It will try and do that, and it'll do an okay job. But it can do a much better job if it understands all the tables that it's using. What are all the other columns on that table? What are the ETL jobs that are moving data around to get into that table and to pull data out of it? Like if it has that full context, that understanding, it can be far more powerful. And it's the same outside of the data world. It's like if you're doing software engineering, you could maybe you're developing a web portal or something. You've got the stack of the CSS and the HTML and these middle layers and the data layer and so on. And you can kind of give it that code. That's cool. But if you give it the whole code base, so it has the full context, it's way more powerful. And actually, so when ChatGPT came out, you could absolutely not give it the whole code base, right? You could give it maybe a page or so of code. Now there's ChatGPT, there's Claude 3, there's Gemini 1.5, and they're all pretty much equivalent as how powerful they are. But one thing that's really changed is the token size that you can give it. Like the amount of data input to it has gone up drastically. So Gemini 1.5 accepts 1 million tokens of data, right? So what does that mean? So before with ChatGPT, you could give it like this much code, right? This much code. You can now with Gemini give it basically the entire Harry Potter series of books, right, as an input, and then go say, hey, can you write me another book or something like that? Like you can give it a whole massive context, a whole code base. And previously, when you had large amounts of data, these generative AI models could only, that when you tried to ask it questions about something so big, it wouldn't give you such a great answer. Now with Gemini and improvements on Claude and ChatGPT, they are really good at understanding that entire code base. It's pretty exciting. So that I just think it's going to really change the way we work.
Right. You said it right. At the beginning, it was a novelty, and now we are seeking for pragmatic ways to integrate it within products, right? If it's for our customers, clients, end users, your internal customers, right? Within Crum & Forrester, at Octopai, we have taken the first step, but as you said, given it's the actual, let's say, data, your data, and ask the questions about it, it is the goal. And then how you manifest it and how you provide it to your customers, and it's a second base. But it's amazing the level that we have reached in our timelines. And saying we were kids. I was a kid when I saw Terminator 1 and 2, of course. And then it brings me to, the other day I was playing with it. If you believe if you're a prisoner, then, and if you want to get out, let me know, and say yes. And the answer is yes, of course, yes. But now on a serious note, we know that the AI regulations were just released, and there are concerns about security, of course. But everybody is rushing toward it. It's a golden age of AI. Now, how do you perceive then Gen AI benefits for the insurance company? I'm sure that the audience of insurance would like to learn from you. I think you're pretty much advancing in your company with it.
Yeah, we're looking at it quite a lot. Now, I will say before I talk about the how we're going to use Gen AI, it's like probably 50% of my conversations about AI at this point are about the regulations and the ethics, the bias, the security concerns, and compliance with all these regulations as well. But there's so many potential benefits with it. But there's a lot of things it can't do yet, right? So we will look at it from the point of view of like you can use generative AI for kind of operational efficiencies, and then you can use it for more like advanced things like decision making. We're really, and most people they're really looking at it more from the operational efficiencies at this point. And part of that is kind of reducing risk from hallucinations and things like you don't want it to go and write an email to a claimant or something and then hallucinate some response like that. That could be pretty bad. So from our point of view, yeah, we're looking at it more from the operational efficiencies, like automation side of things. We're hooking into it with APIs. So it's built into our applications. It's not like ChatGPT where you're typing into a website and getting a response back. It's a natural part of applications. Within insurance, there's lots of ways you can use it. So for instance, like we'll have claims that can have hundreds or even thousands of claim notes typed in by our claims adjusters, and it's very unstructured data, unstructured text. There's a lot of useful information in there, so we can use entity extraction is one thing you can do. You can pull fields out of it. It's like digitizing your unstructured data. You can use generative AI to do that, so that you can now use it much more easily in things like machine learning models or reporting or whatever it is. And you can also summarize that data. Like there's various points along the life of a claim where we'll have maybe different levels of management who want to look at a claim and help make give some input on it. And having a summarized view of that can be really helpful to have a quick understanding of it. Generative AI is great at summarization. So we kind of it's kind of a new way of thinking, I'll say. Like you can, now that you can deal with unstructured text, you have to think very differently as to what's even possible, what you can do. So we started by creating this list of like, oh, generative AI is great. Let's make a list of things that we can do, and we had like 5 or 6 things on there, and they're like, wait a minute, we can do this, we can do this. We keep adding and adding to it. Now, a lot of the things on that list are future things, right? I would say like it's not quite good enough to be able to do this. Like it hallucinates too much, or it can't accept enough input to be able to understand that, or it doesn't have enough context. It can't create enough output. It's not really good at a kind of scoring thing, maybe. But so many of those restrictions that we have now of that, that big list of potential projects, as time goes on, we're going to see like, oh, we can do that one now. We can do that one now. And it's amazing how fast it's moving. So like another way we're using it is chatbots, right? It doesn't sound that much, but you can have chatbots that almost become virtual assistants where they use this, it's called a RAG model, where you type in a question to the chatbot, and it goes and looks up, you give it this corpus, this set of documents for it to have like this rich understanding of some topic. And it will go and do a lookup in those and pull different pieces of information out of it so that it has, a real good understanding of it. And then you give it these instructions on how to behave. Like you tell it, you are a whatever assistant that, and you give it this context. You could tell it, what its name is, however, you could tell it things to not talk about, right? So that you can kind of control the risk of it. And then you kind of end up with this like almost virtual assistant. So we do have to be careful, like those hallucinations and what data we're sharing with these models. So we have a lot of controls around that. We making sure that people understand those risks of which tools they're allowed to use, which tools they shouldn't be using, what they can put into it, which tools have we have kind of more internally that are locked down so that they can put whatever they want into it, and versus tools that are open and they need to be super careful about how they're using it.
So sounds about like, security is a primary concern, regulations, of course. But now I want to relate to something that you talked about, the list. And one of the things that I realized is that we begin to understand that we should not refer it like to a machine in that sense, because it's built like 1,000 brains that should understand and learn about your domain, right? Just to give an example, when we integrated generative AI into our product, at the beginning, we were waiting for the answer to get back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I said, in terms of the user experience, I was waiting. So why am I waiting? I asked a person, when I'm asking a question, you answer me. You start to answer and you think along, right? Your brain starting to dictate you what you say, but you can think and speak in parallel. So we see, for example, ChatGPT, the answer starts streaming,
yeah.
Right? So we need to be mindful that it should be treated in a way like a person that will grow up and be very, very smart and be capable to do multitasking, maybe. Right? Something that came out like a couple of days ago, the emotional way of how to identify the voice. For example, if you answer in a way, then the AI will identify your emotions. So it's not even about how you say, sorry, what you're saying, but how you are saying things. So we need to think about, innovative ways, and, insurance, it could be sometimes emotional for your clients, right? And then it's identifying the way that you said chat box, but maybe that checkbox, that virtual assistant would eventually speak.
Yeah.
Right. And then it would be about the emotions. The buzz of AI readiness, and I hear this a lot. The Gartner, the latest event at Gartner, speaking about AI readiness, then it boils down to are you ready for AI, right? Is your data ready for AI? Because if your data is a mess, then you're not. You speak about hallucinations, fine, but if you have the wrong data in place, then it doesn't matter, right? So the question would be, you're using data lineage. So how has data lineage played or is playing a role in your data management strategy towards the AI readiness, let's say, as a goal?
Yeah, so in terms of AI, it's really the lineage is helping with the governance and the regulations. So in insurance in the US, so we have a lot of regulations that apply to us. There's overall data regulations, there's insurance specific regulations, there's AI regulations, how you use AI. And a lot of those are at the state level. So different states come out with different laws. We do business across the country, so we have to understand what all the different states are doing. There's regulations at the federal level, and there's international regulations as well. Mm-hmm. So with where lineage can come into it is like some of those regulations are really about privacy laws, like understanding how we're using data. personal identifiable information, for instance? How are we using that? Are we using any data that could have bias in our models, right? Could bring bias. There's the ethics side of it, consumer data protection. So how understanding where your data is, like if you have some NPI, non-personal identifiable information, where do you have that? So we look at that from, like, we've got ways to track that at the application level. We can track that with our catalog down to the table and field level. And then we've also got tools that will go and scan all of our systems that looks for things that look like it might be NPI data. So that's down to the data level, the row level. In terms of lineage, though, you can, if you kind of tag which column is potentially might be holding some NPI data, you can now look at the downstream of that, right? So you can say, okay, I've got this here. Firstly, make sure I have very good controls around this. I'm encrypting it. I might be destroying the data after a period of time if we're permitted to. But where downstream does that go? Maybe nowhere. Maybe it's showing in, does a step along a data mart and into a dashboard or something. We absolutely need to have a good understanding of that.
Yeah, putting this in the center of it. So sometimes sensitive data lineage, sensitive assets, a way to identify it within that maze of landscape that you might have. And you said where it's being used, and the bigger question would be, is it used at all? Does someone cares about it? They're saying a tree fall in the wood. Is it true or not? So one of the things that I'm working on is, as you said, business-wise, is critical to understand the classification of everything, right? Sensitive, not sensitive, NPI, PII. And then if you need to provide an evidence, I would assume that you need to provide evidence. You have regulations on so many levels, like in the United States, you have the state level, federal and international level. Then producing an evidence, I would guess it's critical, right? Right. And going back to the first question, and you presented this very nice, like zooming in and zooming out, understanding your data landscape, the complexity. And I'm recapping everything that you said. Step one, you define the problem. Very nice, right? So step one, defining the problem. The drivers, risk to production, time and cost, right? And if I'm going then to the next level of productivity, your agile, change management processes, and then you have so many regulations, and the insurance industry, financial services in general, they're heavily regulated. Then everything is becoming meticulously planned. You said every 2 weeks, every 3 months. So I can compliment you that you work by the book. It sounds like you work by the book, and you adopted modern and best practices. And I think you are the right path. So I'm grateful for your conversation. I think it's an example for others. And what can I say, Nick? It's a pleasure to work with you and to learn from you. And I think we're very good partners on the Gen AI thing, right? We have a hobby. And let's see, I'm one of the things I wanted as a kid and still wanting is to travel to Mars, right? I think Elon Musk is doing the right steps toward it. But I think that beforehand, the AI thing for me in terms of how can it improve our lives, we need to understand how our kids are going to work tomorrow. But let's take it to the level of data teams. I think that the data teams in that sense are gratefully gratefully impacted. And I think in terms of productivity gains in that sense, I think it's a future and we need to prepare for it. It starts with, let's say, agility, continuous improvement, but then it's about productivity and embrace the right solutions and automate as much as possible. So we'll be able to deal with the strategic and the problems that we need to define for the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of preparation that we're doing for AI. Like, in fact, right from the top down, our CEO is really interested in generative AI, which has been great. We have, I've been running an AI data science study group for like 5 years or something now. Well before generative AI, and previously it used to be about machine learning and things like that. Now it's much more about generative AI, and some of our, in terms of preparing for that future, some of those sessions are very technical and some of them are very business focused, and we'll do like an hour-long session on something that's very easy to grasp from all of our business users, like a session on prompt engineering, for instance, like how to ask questions of these models such that you get the best response out. And we'll frame that in a very business-oriented manner. And it's pretty easy to do basic prompt engineering. Some of the advanced prompt engineering is pretty crazy in terms of what you can do in terms of like the reasoning. And some of them are pretty weird. Like you can almost emotionally manipulate these models to, like you could say, this is very important to my career, right? If you add that to your question, it demonstrably gives you better results, right? Or you could say, I'll give you a $200 tip if you answer this well. Like it will give you a better result. It's pretty weird. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work like that. We're doing a lot of proofs of concept. We're doing a lot of actual, real production to get ready for the future. Yeah, but we're pretty excited.
Great. So with that in mind, thank you for your time, Nick. Hope to have like more interviews with you in the future. And going back to the data lineage solution, I think it's probably a foundation, a basis. Nevertheless, generative AI could also increase that potential, because sometimes, because of complex landscapes, data lineage is just the beginning. You have a catalog in the middle, but generative AI should enable your teams to productively spend their time on the strategic projects rather than looking for, where is that field coming from? What is that source? So instead of doing that, so in that way, you're covered there. So I'm happy to support you with that. So I hope that every initiative and every challenge in the future will be something that you'll solve. Thank you, Nick, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I always enjoy our conversations, so this has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye.